All right, so you're a total beginner. You're just starting your gardening adventure. What better plant to accompany you on that adventure than the strawberry? Now, you'd be hard pressed to find anybody that doesn't like a fresh strawberry right from their garden. So in this video, I'll show you how to plant a successful bed of strawberries, even if you've never grown anything before. So you're just starting out. Maybe you've grown a few things here or there. Maybe you bought some tomato plants and put them on your balcony. Maybe you're a complete beginner. Maybe you don't know the difference between soil and dirt. It doesn't matter. Strawberries are the perfect gateway from taking you from a brown thumb to an advanced green thumb. Now, if you're growing strawberries for the first time, you're going to want to grow them in a raised bed. For some tips on how to build your own raised bed for very few dollars, I'll throw some links in the description down below. So now that you have your raised bed in place, you're going to want to line the bottom with newspaper. Now, I usually do this to suppress any grass or weeds coming up. As well, you can see I've got mine sitting on a bed of gravel. Well, that newspaper will prevent that water from flushing the soil out into my pathway beside it. So I'm going to go ahead now and line my bottom with the newspaper. Now, when you're filling your bed with newspaper, you want to make sure not to use glossy flyers or any of those perfume ads. Colored newspaper is fine. Most newspapers around the world use vegetable ink for their dyes. But if you want to err on the safe side, you can simply get unprinted newspaper as well. Okay, now that we're all lined up, we're ready to start filling our bed with compost. Okay, if you're just starting out, you might not have access to a big, well-aged compost pile like I do. So sourcing out your compost to fill your raised bed could be one of your biggest expenses. Okay, so I know I said we were planting strawberries, but I have this grapevine here that's been suffering in this pot, probably all summer, and it needs to get into somewhere bigger. So we got a lot of bed space here, so I'm going to throw the grapevine in the corner. That's the great thing about strawberries, is they're great companion plants for a lot of other fruits and vegetables. So because this guy was quite root bound, you're going to want to break up that root ball a bit. You want to give those new roots a chance to find their way away from that grape plant and establish themselves. Okay, the bed's starting to take shape. You can see we got our grapevine in there, and we still got about 7 feet of bed space left. We got the compost probably about 3/4 of the way up. So what we're gonna wanna do now is put a skim coat of potting mix on top of there, about 1 to 2 inches. Okay, so I make my own potting mix, and I'll throw a link to that in the video description below. But let's talk about the reason why you need to put that coat of potting mix on there. Now, as great as compost is, it's not great for seedlings. And so even though we're not using seedlings, we are transplanting strawberries and they're gonna act like a seedling. So we wanna give them as little shock as possible. So you always wanna use a quality seedling or potting mix whenever you're transplanting plants, no matter how big they are. Now, compost is great, but it's just a base. So let's go ahead and level this guy off and then give it some water. So after all that, the bed is finally ready for our strawberry plants. Okay, so if you're just starting out, you're probably buying your strawberry plants, from the hardware store or the garden center, or, you're taking runners from your neighbor's plants or your friends or your family. I'll throw a link down below how you can take your own strawberry runners and make your own strawberry mother plants for free. Now in my case, I've got a strawberry bed here that's at the end of its life. So I'm going to take some of the crowns out of here, some of the younger ones, so we can turn them into mother plants. So we're going to do square foot gardening. We know we got 7 feet to work with. I'm going to grab 7 strawberry plants. So you just want to cut any old foliage off, any sort of long leaves that are, starting to turn brown. Now you notice I have a tray here with wet newspaper. It's very hot out today, so when I'm taking these guys out of the ground, I'm quickly covering them with the wet newspaper. At this point as well, you're going to want to cut any flower buds off. Simply because this late in the season, I'm not too concerned with flower production, and it takes a lot out of the plant. Okay, so we've collected or bought our strawberry plants. Let's go ahead and use the rest of the potting mix to pot these guys up. Now, strawberry plants can be tricky because you don't want to bury the crown. The crown is right where the leaves start. You want the soil to be about there. But because of that, that means these plants are sitting up pretty high. And when they sit up pretty high, they're easy to knock over, especially when you water them. So, it takes a while for the roots of these guys to take a hold in the soil. So you just got to be a little bit delicate with this bed until these strawberries establish themselves. One of the common mistakes I see is, people will think, oh no, the strawberry's falling over, I gotta bury it. And they bury it, halfway up the leaves, and then the crowns rot in the winter because they get too wet. And then they think strawberries are hard to grow, which, they're not. So keep those crowns above soil level, and your plants will thrive. Now, the other thing about strawberries is I'm planting these guys with next year's production in mind. So what does that mean? Well, often your strawberry yields, your strawberry production is all based on what you did with the plants the year before. So I'm not worried, this late in summer for these strawberries to produce strawberries this year. In fact, if I see a flower bud, I'm going to cut it off because it's taking energy away from the plant. I'm doing this for next year's strawberry production. So if you're buying plants this late, or if you're planting runners this late in the season, you're doing it for next year's production. Literally, if you want to plant strawberries and get fruit the same year, you need to buy plants or have runners or establish plants in pots that already have flowers on them, back in April and March. Strawberry is a cold weather plant. So right now, you want to give your strawberry bed a final watering. And if you do have some mulch, a thin layer of that won't hurt either. So just be careful when you're watering these guys. They might fall over on you. So if you've got a little bit finer of a watering can, or a spray nozzle on your hose, that would probably work better than this. But I'm being pretty careful. You can also water around them, instead of watering on top of them. It won't take long for them to get established, maybe a week or so. In a future video, we'll come back and revisit this bed, next week. Okay, that's it. Start to finish, maybe about 30 to 40 minutes, and I'll have enough strawberries next year out of this bed to feed an entire family. Strawberries in your grocery store are some of the most sprayed fruit that you can buy. So growing them in your garden, they're chemical free, they're pesticide free. And not only that, you can go pick them whenever you want. So the quick takeaways from this video are, compost, it's going to be your biggest expense, but once you can source that out, you'll be okay. Layer your compost in the bed at least a couple inches from the top, because you're going to need to put a skim coat of potting mix before you plant the strawberries. Put that skim coat of potting mix in there, give it a good watering, then your strawberry plants are ready to go in. Fill around those strawberries, taking note not to bury the crowns, and then give it one final watering before you're done. Now, strawberry production is predicated on what you did the year before. So this time of year, me planting strawberries like this is all about next year. All right, guys, that's it for this video. Thanks for bringing me along on your gardening adventure. As always, leave any questions or comments down below. Everybody loves strawberries. So let's fill up that comment section with all the tips and tricks that you've learned of growing strawberries over the years. Click subscribe if you haven't already. For those of you that have, I really do appreciate the support. And I'll see you next time.